Say what you will about Disney Star Wars, but they have been nailing the creature design every single time, and I think we've hit top tier creature design with this episode. Hello interwebs, I hope you're all doing well, and welcome to my review of the latest episode of Star Wars Skeleton Crew. This one, episode 3, titled Very Interesting for an Astrogation Problem, which is a very lengthy title, but again, the character who says that title is fantastic, and we will get into it. Just briefly, I do want to apologize for the weird shot that you're getting today. I am in the middle of moving, so if you didn't catch my Dune Prophecy video from earlier this week, I went into further detail on it, but I just for the next few weeks, you're probably going to be getting just a lower res version of me and my beautiful face, just because my other camera stuff is just hopping around the house and in different boxes and things. So hopefully I'll get into a much better and much nicer setup within the next few weeks. But until then, you're just gonna have to deal with this close-up version with the slightly changing white balance. I'm noticing. I'll fix that for next time on this screen. But let us actually get into the review proper. This one continues what I said last week, which is I think this is a very fun, very young kid-focused Star Wars, and it feels very much again in that vein of Star Trek Prodigy, where we have these kids getting to explore the Star Wars galaxy and learn what it means for a new generation of people who did not grow up on like the original trilogy of Star Wars and things like that. Again, it feels like that Star Trek Prodigy, but for Star Wars. And there's a version of the show where I feel like it could have like a weekly episode structure, and I think that might have been to its benefit, because I feel like my one major negative with this episode comes down to the fact that it is trying to do a Goonies-style movie, but in an episodic format, and as a result, this episode feels very, very fast. And what I mean by that is we get right into the action with Jude Law's character helping the kids escape. We learn a little bit about Jude Law's character, who I'll talk about in just a moment, and then we're on to like the next moment where we go to this other planet and we sort of have this meeting between Jude Law's character and Kim, who I'll talk about and is fantastic. And it just kind of moves from plot beat to plot beat, and while we get a few downtime moments in this episode, we don't get a whole lot of them, and as a result, I feel like there's some missing connective tissue that I probably would have gotten in like a 2-hour movie. I mean, it seems counterproductive to say like, oh, we have how many episodes? I don't know how many episodes are there this season, but like an 8-episode season, let's say, versus a 2-hour movie. But I feel like because this is trying to contain itself within a 45-minute structure and trying to like have like a whole satisfactory action beat and adventure within a single episode, while still telling one overarching story, rather than having like one episode here to just tell a single adventure about the characters and another episode here. Like, it's not doing episodic storytelling; it's telling one bigger story, but it's trying to break it up with action beats and have it feel like a full adventure. I feel like we're losing just a few of these beats where we get to have just moments with the characters interacting with each other. Now, that being said, if we get to next week, and next week kind of slows things down, and we get some moments just between Jude Law and the rest of the kids just getting to know each other, just having conversations, and maybe like a minor adventure between all of them, I feel like that would fix up this problem. But just for this episode, it feels like we move really, really quick, and we don't get some time with Jude Law's character, and I would have liked that a little bit more, like in between our action beats. We get some, but not as much as I would want, and I think hopefully next week's episode can fix that up, but just it's a little bit of something that I'm feeling I wanted more of by the end of this episode. All that being said, what is here is great. We start off the episode focusing on the parents back on Ad-Aden, and again, sort of reinforcing the mystery there. Some of you caught, and I missed this last week, but should have been very obvious, which is Ad-Aden is clearly of the Old Republic. It's some project of the Old Republic, even before the New Republic that we have now at this era in Star Wars, and they've been closed off from the galaxy. We don't get to learn a ton more here, but there is clearly something going on with the fact that there are a lot of droids that are in charge. This supposed supervisor, what is that? What's the great work? The kids say that all their parents are analyzing things at this point in the show. They sort of mention that, and so it's sort of like, okay, there's obviously some big mystery here, and I am very curious because I loved the setup for it in episode 1. We already talked about that in my last week's review of like the suburbs being very much this thing of like controlling your identity, controlling telling where you get to be. The jobs that you get are very much like, oh, be an analyst, be, whatever. These very like rudimentary, very just, capitalist jobs, just sit in a cubicle and do your work. So curious to see where all that's going to go. I think there's some interesting concepts being played with there, and I could see that being a very fun mystery. The other mystery we have, obviously, is around Jude Law, and what I loved about this episode in particular is that it didn't treat us or the kids like idiots. Well, obviously, our main kid character is like, he's a Jedi, he's great, and he sort of is inspired by his Jude Law's ability to use the Force. The other kids do not trust him nearly as quickly, and I really appreciated that, because it would have been frustrating to me if they would have all just went like, hey, he's a Jedi, and I'm just going here like, okay, he's clearly not, or at least there's something else going on here. And I like that the kids instantly figured that out, did not trust him, and we get that paid off in this episode very clearly, that there is potentially many different answers to that question going on, and it rewards us within this singular episode for asking that question, because while they're being rescued, while he's rescuing Smee, which I didn't catch that last week, the fact that the droid's name is Smee, SM33, hilarious, love that, very dumb in the best way possible, very Star Wars. While rescuing him, we learned that he is probably the captain from the opening crawl, or the opening sequence from the first episode, who was wearing the mask and only rescued 1 credit, so he's probably that guy. But also he must have some other history, because he says at one point at the end of the episode, when confronting the kids sort of confront him, he says, I'm alone. Now, it could just mean he's alone, no one else trusts him as part of his pirate gang, but we also don't know where he comes from. And so he has many multiple names that we see with Kim, and just his different backstories, but he also has Force powers. So, like, there's still a lot of open stuff here. I thought, like, oh, just him being revealed as the pirate captain would just like, oh, well, he's a con man, and he's faking the Force to get some stuff out of them. But, like, no, he clearly has Force powers. So it's like, is he a Jedi who survived Order 66? I think it'd be interesting if he had, like, been a kid who was traumatized during Order 66, and can relate to the kids that way, of being cut off from his identity and his history, the same way the kids kind of are cut off from their home, but also cut off from the galaxy. Like, there's some parallels that would be kind of fun. My only knock against something like that is that we've seen that sort of Jedi on the run who survived Order 66 before, and in fact there's his storyline's different. We had Cal Kestis over in the Star Wars Jedi Survivor, Jedi Fallen Order games, who was also a kid traumatized by Order 66 and managed to escape, but obviously took different ways. Like Cal Kestis, we don't know where he is at this point in the timeline, but from those games he was a resistance fighter, whereas here obviously this guy took up some form of piracy and became a scoundrel. So I think there's different divergent paths, but it is a sort of similar origin point that we've kind of it's been a little overused in Star Wars, especially in the Disney era, in ancillary media and some other things. So, perhaps they'll be able to put a nice spin on it, and I don't think it necessarily would be bad. I think it would work just fine for this show if that ended up being the case, but maybe hopefully they can put a little bit of a little spice on it, but I think it also would work just fine. But I will say Jared Leto, I always love Jared Leto. I always think he's really fun. Here he's doing fine. Like, I think he's bringing enough energy and fun to the character, but he's not doing anything kind of specifically exciting or unique to the character. He's just sort of playing like Jude Law with a bit of a rough edge on him, which again, I have no problem with. I love my Jude Law, but he's also not doing anything particularly like, oh yeah, this is just a memorable performance. So, it's solid. He's an enjoyable presence, if not necessarily a memorable one outside of him being Jude Law. But who is memorable is our visit to Kim, who I've been alluding to it several times, but the owl creature was wonderful, so creative, so joyous. I also love that she was very concerned for the children. You would expect like a Jude Law kind of character would be like, oh, he's going to another very like Jabba the Hutt-esque kind of character. But no, it's like an owl who's actually seems very nice and concerned for the kids and is very inquisitive. Like, that fits an owl character, but it also like is just a different kind of vibe for what I would expect a Jude Law character to know in terms of friends. And so I think that's even deepens the mystery even more. And obviously we start to like narrow down where more of Atten is. So I think all of this sets it up really well. Like I said, I think just the pacing this episode was really, the other thing I wanted to mention, Smee being protective of the kids and his eye lying twice was very funny. I'm actually really loving Smee. Might end up being the secret standout character of the show phenomenal. And I love the repeated bit of like the rat keep on coming out of his eye. Just wonderful. Like Smee all around. I'm here for, I stand. It's lovely. And I love that he has concern for the kids and is protective of the kids, like overly so. So like that dynamic just endears him to me so much. But sorry, to wrap out, I do think that this show, like I said, I think that this episode was a little bit fast, and I would have liked some slowdown time, and hopefully we'll get that next episode. If we get that, I think that this show is just on course to be just a really fun, enjoyable time that I'm engaged with. You know, it's not Andor level of like, oh my god, this is amazing, but it's like, it's fun, it's enjoyable, it's a good romp, and I think it's hitting that super, super well. So all that being said, just a great fun show, and I'm excited to see where we go next. But until that time, hopefully you all, my friends, will live long and prosper.